Once, while I was out shopping with a friend, I accidentally dropped my wallet somewhere. A security guard helped us search for it. He was incredibly kind, and when we found the wallet, he seemed genuinely happy for us. I felt lucky to have encountered such a kind person, and I knew I had to thank him properly. So one day when I had some free time, I made a special trip to see him. I found the guard from before and greeted him. To show my gratitude, I brought a box of jelly for the guards. I went to the security office. Right then, the guard was watching the monitor screens, and there seemed to be something strange in the footage. The guard said it looked like it had appeared again. I asked him what was going on. He answered, "Do you see that blurry shadow? It looks like a little girl." I looked closely at the monitor, near the restroom entrance. There really was the shadow of a little girl. Since I'd loved horror stories since childhood, I wanted to see what this little girl's shadow actually was. So I said I'd go check it out, and headed to the location the camera was filming. But when I got there, the shadow was completely gone. I felt a bit disappointed, though maybe I would have been scared anyway, so part of me felt relieved. Later, I returned to the security office, gave them the jelly and thanked the guard, and we naturally became good friends. After that, we'd often message and chat, but my guard friend kept asking me things like, "How's your body? Are you feeling unwell?" At first I thought he was just being caring, but after 2 months, he stopped asking about my health. I found it a bit strange. So one day, I asked him, "I'm not actually weak or sickly. Why do you keep worrying about my health?" My guard friend told me, "Because when you went to look at that dark girl's shadow, I saw on the monitor that the shadow followed you the whole time. I was worried something would happen to your body. But she's gone now, so you don't need to worry anymore." After hearing what my friend told me, I finally understood. Recently, when I'd walk through dark alleys after work, I'd always felt like someone was following me. It turned out to be that little girl. I'd been working in this building for a while now, and recently I'd experienced something strange. The building where I work is a commercial building, with guards stationed 20-4 hours. The inconvenient thing is, the vending machines are on the 7th floor, so whenever you want to buy a drink, you have to go up to the 7th floor break area. That night, after everyone had left the building, my colleague and I were chatting in the 4th floor guard break room, waiting for the 11 o'clock patrol. After the 11 o'clock patrol, I could hand off to the colleague coming in for the night shift and go home. Finally 11 o'clock came. I took the stairs, patrolling from the basement up to the 7th floor. When I reached the 7th floor, I thought I'd grab a drink before continuing my patrol. So I walked alone into the break area next to the elevator. Inside the break area, only the faint glow of the vending machine lights was on. I walked up to the machine, hesitating over what to buy. While I was hesitating, suddenly I heard a sound. It startled me. I looked toward the doorway. Outside was a long corridor, since the building's lights had already been shut off for the night. The end of the corridor was pitch black and invisible. The sound came rhythmically from the darkness. I wondered, is that the sound of footsteps? At first I thought it was my colleague coming down from patrolling the roof, trying to mess with me. But as the sound grew clearer, I quickly realized it probably wasn't my colleague. I thought, could that be the sound of high heels? The question appeared in my mind. But the building had been empty for a while now. It couldn't be someone working late, and though the footsteps sounded quiet, my eyes had already adjusted to the darkness. Yet I couldn't see even a shadow, though my duty was to ensure the building's security. I truly felt afraid at that moment, what Korsaville felt, so I didn't dare shine my flashlight over to check. I immediately left the break area and headed for the elevator, pressing the down button. While I waited for the elevator, I faced toward the source of the sound, staring intently. The sound of high heels was gradually approaching. I was really nervous then, Finally, the elevator arrived at the 7th floor. The doors opened. The instant the elevator doors opened, the sound of high heels suddenly became urgent, rushing toward me. The impact of the sound scared me so badly, I rushed into the elevator, pressed the button for the 4th floor, and frantically mashed the close door button. After I safely reached the 4th floor, I rushed back to the security guard break room. I was already exhausted and terrified, so I didn't want to wait for the next shift's junior guard to arrive for the handover before leaving. I just changed my clothes and prepared to escape home. After that, I grabbed my things, left the guard room, got into the elevator, and pressed the button for the 1st floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, and immediately I felt something was wrong. The elevator seemed to be moving upward. I stared at the 1st floor button, which was lit up, but the elevator panel showed the elevator was moving up. This situation made me tense and afraid. I didn't know which floor the elevator was taking me to. However, the elevator traveled all the way up to the 7th floor, the floor I least wanted to reach, and stopped. Then the elevator doors slowly opened. The moment the doors opened, I saw my greatest fear. There was a pair of bright red high heels standing neatly just outside the elevator. I gasped in terror and frantically pressed the close door button. Fortunately, the elevator doors closed quickly and brought me down to the 1st floor. When I reached the 1st floor, I ran into the junior guard who was just arriving for the night shift. He asked why I hadn't waited for the handover. I told him what had just happened to me. After hearing my story, he laughed and said, "Come on, Senior, you're too timid. I'll go check it out, come with me." Though I was terrified, I still went with him to the 7th floor. When we reached the 7th floor and the elevator doors opened, there were no high heels. Then the junior turned on his flashlight and walked alone into the dark depths of the corridor. After searching around, he came back laughing and said, "Senior, you're probably just too tired. I didn't see any high heels, but I've heard that when people are too exhausted and their mental state isn't good, they easily see things they shouldn't see. So Senior, you should go home and rest." Later, with the junior's escort, I got into a taxi and went home. Since I lived with my mother, I felt a bit more at ease once I got home. But as soon as I arrived, my mother said to me, "You don't leave gifts for your girlfriend lying around on your bed." Completely confused, I replied, "Gift? I didn't buy any gift." "Really? Don't just go into other people's rooms." My mother said, "Huh? But I saw a pair of red high heels sitting there. Didn't you buy them?" When I heard what my mother said, my scalp immediately went numb. That night, I didn't even enter my room. My mother and I went to stay at a nearby relative's house for the night. The next morning, when my mother and I returned home, those high heels were really there on my bed. Later, my mother and I took those high heels to a shrine and had the shrine staff dispose of them. And that day when I went to work, the junior told me something. He said that in the department at the far end of the 7th floor corridor, someone had reported something missing. The person was a female employee. We both knew she was cute, cheerful, and had a strong sense of responsibility. A while back, she had collapsed from overwork and had taken some time off to recover. Every day she wore sneakers to work, then changed into high heels she kept at the office once she arrived. When she came back to work that day, she discovered her red high heels were missing. After hearing what the junior told me, I told him what had happened when I got home yesterday. After hearing about my experience, the junior said, "Senior, could the shoes you sent to the shrine be that female employee's? I've heard that objects used for a long time can develop a spiritual nature. Could those shoes have been worried about their owner and mistaken you for her, so they followed you home? After all, Senior, don't you have the same surname as that female employee?" After hearing the junior's analysis, I thought things might indeed be that way. But then, I realized if those high heels really were her belongings, that would be terrible, because I'd already given them to the shrine, and I didn't know what to do about it. Though this troubled me somewhat. I really hoped those high heels did belong to that female employee, because if they didn't, then there might be something else existing on the 7th floor. This is something my friend experienced when she was young. At the time, she was attending a cram school, one of those prep schools for entrance exams. So even on summer vacation days when the cram school wasn't holding classes, she would go to the self-minus study room with friends from the school to study. One day, when only the security guard and a few cram school teachers were in the building, she and a few friends were studying in the cram school. After studying for a while, when break time came, they went to a nearby convenience store to buy some things. After buying their things, they decided to explore the upper floors of the cram school building. She wasn't entirely sure how many floors the building had, but according to her, the 1st through 4th floors were all occupied by the cram school, while the upper floors remained vacant. The cram school had strictly warned students never to venture to the other floors of the building. That day, they took the stairs up. Along the way, they came across a rope stretched across the stairwell with a sign hanging from it that read "No Entry." They stepped over the rope and kept climbing. Their plan was to reach the rooftop and eat some snacks. But after climbing several floors, they ran into a security guard coming down from above. They'd been caught. When the guard saw them, he asked, "What are you doing here?" At that moment, my friend noticed the guard's name tag. It read Kaneda. Terrified that the guard would report them to the cram school teachers, they panicked and immediately turned to rush back downstairs. To avoid getting caught, they descended to a certain floor, crossed through an empty, echoing corridor, then quickly fled down the stairs at the other end of the hallway. But after a while, my friend noticed something strange. They'd been going down for quite some time, yet they still couldn't find the floor where the cram school was located. As he descended, he glanced at the floor marker in the stairwell 7th floor. Something felt off about it, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what. Meanwhile, the sound of the guard's footsteps chasing them from behind kept getting closer. He didn't have time to think it through, he just kept running downward with his friends. However, when they reached the next landing, he discovered the floor marker still read 7th floor. After that, no matter how long they kept running down, every floor was the 7th floor. They stopped in their tracks, panic setting in. Someone started crying, but the guard's footsteps didn't stop, they were rapidly closing in. Then, just as those footsteps were about to reach the floor where they stood, a teacher from the cram school suddenly appeared from below, grabbing hold of all of them. The teacher asked angrily, "You went to the upper floors, didn't you? I specifically told you not to go up there." My friend explained what had happened. After listening, the teacher told them this a long time ago. There was a security guard who worked upstairs. While playing with some of the cram school children, he accidentally fell down the stairs. His neck broke, and he died. Ever since that incident, strange things kept happening on the upper floors. That's why those floors have never been rented out. After hearing what the teacher said, my friend felt a chill run through him. Then the teacher asked, "What was the name of the guard you encountered? I'll go apologize to him on your behalf later." He told the teacher he'd seen the name Kaneda on the name tag. The teacher's face immediately darkened. Then he quietly told them, "In the story I just told you, the guard who fell to his death, his surname was Kaneda." Thinking back, that was a week ago. It was summer break at university, so I picked up some part-minus time, worked weekdays and the weekend as a security guard as a supermarket. The medium-sized supermarket, located in the suburbs, was open 20-4 hours. My shift usually ran from 10 at night until 6 the next morning. My job was mostly patrolling for suspicious individuals and checking to make sure the store's facilities were functioning properly. One night, I was taking a break in the restroom behind the meat section on the first floor. The restroom was a stuffy space, maybe 80 square feet. Two cheap fluorescent lights hung from the ceiling, one of them half-minus burned out, so the whole room was dim. There were a few old lockers inside, and by the window sat two relatively spacious but cluttered desks. I was sitting in a chair at one of those desks, finishing a can coffee and smoking a cigarette, letting my mind drift. Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice behind me say, "Oh, excuse me." Startled, I turned around. A woman stood in the doorway. She wore an ordinary white blouse and a plain skirt, but strangely, her face was completely black like a shadow. I couldn't make out any features. I asked her, "What's wrong?" She stood there and said her 3-year-old son was missing, following the instructions in the work manual. I first asked her for the child's description, then turned on the microphone switch on the desk and made an announcement over the store's PA system. "Thank you for shopping with us. We are currently searching for a lost child. He is a 3-year-old boy wearing a white baseball cap and a red sweatshirt. If you see him, please report to one of our staff members." I repeated the announcement once more. Then I turned to grab the form she needed to fill out. But when I looked back, the woman was gone. I wondered where she'd gone. At that moment, Mr. Hatsuzi Iwa entered the restroom with an absolutely terrifying expression on his face. Mr. Iwa was the most senior security guard at this supermarket. He came over and sat down in the chair beside me. Then, with a grave expression, asked me to describe the woman I'd just seen. I answered him honestly, and then he began to speak. "Actually, around this time last year, there was a college student about your age working part-time here. One late Saturday night, just like you, he was taking a break in this room. Then suddenly, a woman came in saying her child was missing. That woman looked exactly like the one you just described. She told the college student that her child was wearing a white baseball cap and a red sweatshirt. After the student made the in-store announcement and turned back around, the woman had vanished. I asked, "Did they find the boy?" After hearing my question, Mr. Iwa's expression darkened. "The child wasn't found that day," he said, "but the next day, that woman came back to the store again. I asked her if we should call the police to help. She said no. She wanted to search herself. Again, nothing. After that, the woman came back multiple times asking if there was any news of her child. In the end, do you know what she did?" I shook my head, completely at a loss. Mr. Okzawa sighed. "She set herself on fire at the entrance to our supermarket. Of course, she burned to death very quickly." After hearing Mr. Okzawa finish this story, my heart began racing violently. A warm, unpleasant sweat slid down my cheeks. I pressed my trembling legs together, struggling to stay calm. Stammering, I said, "But I clearly saw her just now." Mr. Okzawa looked at me calmly, then continued, "This is what we learned when the police came to question us. A month before that woman first came to our supermarket looking for her son. She and her son were living together in a house in an old residential district downtown. One day, she left her son alone at home while she went to the supermarket to buy groceries. Unfortunately, during that short time, her house caught fire and burned completely. Later, when the fire department investigated, they found matches scattered on the floor near the body, so they determined the fire was caused by her son playing with matches. They also found her son's remains in the wreckage. Neighbors told the police that after that tragedy, the woman's strange behavior began." I asked, "What kind of strange behavior?" Mr. Okzawa Zawa answered. Well, apparently day after day she went around the neighborhood asking if anyone had seen her son. Eventually she even came to our supermarket to ask. By that time, the woman's appearance had become quite haggard, like an old woman. Finally, she did what she did at our supermarket entrance. After Mr. Zawa finished speaking, he lowered his head with a grim expression. Then he looked at me and continued, "Actually, there's one more thing. It's about what happened to that college student who was working here at the time. After that woman's incident, the student's mental state began to deteriorate. Her complexion got worse and worse. Sometimes during work she would suddenly scream, and she'd often mutter to herself, saying, 'She's coming. She's coming.' About a month later, she was found dead in her apartment bed. But the terrifying thing was, when they found her death was bizarre. Her entire body was almost pitch black, her skin charred and covered in blisters." After hearing everything, Mr. Zawa said, "I was terrified, but the real horror began after my shift ended that day. In my apartment building, there would always be knocking sounds coming from one particular door, and after the knocking went on for a while, I could always hear that woman's thin voice saying, 'Where is my child? Please, help me find my child. I can't let her be without me.' I heard her voice every day. All I could do was lie helplessly on the bed by the window, pulling the blanket over my head, trembling non-stop. For the entire week, that woman had disturbed me so much I barely slept at all. Hadn't even left the apartment. I felt my strength draining away, reaching its limit. My mind was starting to blur. And then last night, I heard a different sound, like something scraping across the floor. Trembling, I peeked out through a gap in the blanket toward where the sound was coming from. I saw a small figure dart quickly past in front of me. Nervously, I followed it with my eyes. When my gaze reached the corner of the room, I saw it. My whole body froze in terror. In the pale moonlight, I saw a boy standing there, wearing a white baseball cap and a red athletic jacket. With that ugly, charred face of his, he stared at me with innocent eyes, smiling. I don't know what else I'll encounter after this. Will I end up like that college student? Back when I was working as a security guard at a commercial facility, something happened that I still can't make sense of. My job then was to wait until all the store employees had left, then do the final patrol round. During patrol, I mainly checked the fire alarm system, electrical switches, and looked for any intruders. Every night after everyone left the mall, only the emergency lighting would remain on. The whole place would fall silent. I'd walk through the entire mall alone with just my flashlight. At first, I was actually pretty scared, but after a few months, I gradually got used to it. Sometimes I'd even think if something scary did happen, at least I'd have a story to share with friends, though I'm still a coward. Really, I'm the kind of coward who panics at the slightest noise in the dark. Like once, when I walked past the office photocopier, the motion sensor suddenly activated and I jumped. Another time, while checking the kitchen, a kettle suddenly fell down, scared me to death. But those things were nothing compared to what happened at the game center. During the day, the game center was lively and bustling, but at night, after all the machines were shut off, it became almost noiseless, eerily quiet. All those various dolls and graphics took on a sinister atmosphere. I was patrolling inside the game center, using my flashlight as I went, conducting my inspection. I checked inside the photo booth machines. Good. No one hiding in there. All the game machine power switches were off. Confirmed all the lights were off too. Air conditioning had stopped running. Okay. Everything looked fine. Next was checking the office. As I walked past the restroom and was about to open the office door, I suddenly heard music. The music startled me. I froze. I'd just confirmed all the power was shut off. How could there be music playing? Could it be a ghost? This had never happened before. So cowardly, me was actually terrified. But it was my job, so I had to steel myself and go check. Slowly, I turned around and went back into the game center. This tune, it's so familiar. What song is this? Ah, it's that Apprehension march. I thought about all sorts of random things as I followed the direction of the music. When I reached the vending machine, I saw it had an Apprehension design on it. The music was coming from that vending machine. Ah, I see. This vending machine probably has a timer or some mechanism that makes it play at a certain time. Or maybe it has a motion sensor like the photocopier. Since I'd convinced myself that was the explanation, I felt relieved and just ignored it. Then went to patrol and check the office. But while I was patrolling the office, something strange occurred to me. I patrolled the game center and passed by that vending machine at roughly the same time before. So why had I never heard the music until now? What was the reason? I started getting scared again, so I sped up, quickly finished checking the office, and left the game center. That night, aside from that weird vending machine, nothing else frightening happened. I finished my patrol shift just like that. Later, when I got back to the office, I told my senior colleague what had happened, but he told me he'd been working there for years and nothing like that had ever happened before. So the next day I went to find the manager of the game center. I asked him about the vending machine. He told me that at that time, there wouldn't be any music playing. After hearing what the manager said, I kept wondering what exactly had happened yesterday. That incident remains a mystery to this day. In the days that followed, when I went to check on the game center, I'd still occasionally hear the Apprehension march playing. But the clearer that music became, the more frightened I felt because I could always hear a man's voice, deep and low, mixed in with the music, lazily singing along to that Apprehension march. This summer I'd been working constantly night shifts as a security guard, delivering newspapers at dawn. I'd been living like that for a while when one day, as I was getting ready to leave work, a senior colleague at the company said to me, "There's been some unusual activity at a building nearby. Could you help patrol it? We'll give you extra pay." Hearing extra pay, I agreed immediately. Of course, at the time I didn't think anything was strange about it. But looking back, when they offer extra pay for something, there's obviously a catch. So I went to that building with a friend from the company. It was a 5-story building, the kind of place that looked like somewhere strange things would happen. When we arrived, we first checked that both the front and back doors were locked. Everything seemed fine. Then we unlocked the front door. My friend and I entered the first floor. The unusual activity had been reported. Nothing there, since we needed to check every floor. We went up to look at each level. We decided that one person would go into patrol while the other waited by the emergency stairwell. Later, my friend and I went up to patrol the 5th floor. I waited for him by the stairwell, while my friend was patrolling. I tried to open the emergency exit door, but it was locked. After he finished checking the 5th floor, he came over laughing and said, "Nothing unusual. We're making easy money this time." Because the emergency door was locked and we couldn't use the stairs, we took the elevator down to the 4th floor. It looked like a warehouse. The hallway was piled high with cardboard boxes. Just as I was about to go in and patrol, the company called. Seeing only one bar of signal on my phone, I answered somewhat anxiously, but the call quickly dropped. My phone showed no signal. I told my friend to wait there, then said I'd go out to find signal and make the call. I turned the handle of the emergency exit door. Surprisingly, the 4th floor emergency door wasn't locked. It opened, but my phone still had no signal, so I kind of gave up. Then I remembered I hadn't patrolled the 5th floor stairwell yet. so I decided to walk up the stairs and take a look. After going up to the 5th floor, I saw nothing unusual and returned to the 4th floor. When I got back, my friend said with a laugh, "You're way too thorough." Later, I continued down alone to check the emergency stairwell doors while looking for phone signal. On the 3rd floor, the door was locked, wouldn't open. Same with the 2nd floor. When I finally got back to the 1st floor, my phone had signal again. It rang, the company calling. When I picked up, they asked, "Your friend's phone has been calling the company repeatedly, but every time we only hear static. What's going on?" I answered with a laugh. "Maybe his phone's broken. He's fine." Then I hung up. After that, I went out through the emergency stairwell, walked to the elevator, and pressed the up button. But the elevator wouldn't come down from the 4th floor. I figured my friend was deliberately messing with me, so I had no choice but to walk back up to the 4th floor through the stairwell. When I reached the 4th floor, my friend wasn't by the stairwell door. I walked over to the elevator to check. The elevator had already gone down to the 1st floor. I thought, alright, where's he hiding? Trying to scare me. I searched the entire 4th floor by myself but still didn't see my friend. I wondered if he'd gone down to patrol the 3rd floor on his own. So I pressed the elevator button. When the elevator came up and I stepped inside, I found my friend's phone lying on the elevator floor. I didn't know what was going on, but instinctively I thought maybe he just hadn't noticed he'd dropped it. I picked up his phone, then went alone to check the remaining floors. Finally, after managing to patrol everything by myself, I felt a bit tired. Time to go back. That's when I suddenly remembered something important. I hadn't seen my friend anywhere. He must have snuck off and gone back on his own. That made me feel pretty helpless, because my friend and I had driven here in the company car. So how was I supposed to get back? As soon as I walked out of the building, sure enough, the company car was already gone. I had no choice but to walk back to the office on my own. That day, my friend really did just leave me there and run off. And when I got back to the company, I heard that my friend had just quit on the spot. It felt a bit off, but I'd just received the extra payment in cash, so I immediately forgot about my friend quitting and didn't think much more about it. Later, when I was organizing my uniform to head home, I discovered my friend's phone was still with me. I figured I had to return it, because my friend didn't have a landline at home. Without a phone, he'd be in real trouble. Even though I grumbled about what a hassle it was, I decided to drop by his place after finishing my paper route in the early morning. My friend lived on the 2nd floor of a really run-down apartment building. After I finished delivering papers, I went to his door and rang the bell, but no one answered. I pressed it several times, then figured that at this hour, if I kept ringing, I'd probably disturb the neighbors. So I decided to come back later and went home to sleep. Later, while I was sleeping at home, I got woken up by a phone ringing. I checked the times, even -30 in the evening. The ringtone was coming from my friend's phone. I picked up. On the other end was my friend's mother. I told her that my friend had dropped his phone, but I couldn't find him anywhere. I expressed my wish to return the phone to my friend, so we arranged to meet at my friend's apartment. When I got to the apartment building where my friend lived and rang the bell, his mother came out right away. Through the crack in the door, I could see into my friend's room. There were some strange patterns on the walls. I'd planned to just hand the phone to his mother and leave, but she said this wasn't a good place to talk. So she pulled me into the room and closed the door. When I entered the room, I frowned, because what was on the walls wasn't some strange pattern. It was more like the marks left behind when fingernails scratch wildly at wallpaper. Then I learned some things from my friend's mother. Last night, when my friend was with me in that building, he'd called his mother and said he'd killed someone. But halfway through, his mother heard him let out a shrill, piercing scream. and then the call cut off. After that, she tried calling back multiple times, but my friend's phone was always busy. Later, after my friend's parents discussed it, his mother took the first train here to find him. My friend's mother borrowed the phone from the apartment manager and called my friend's number. The person who answered was me. My friend's mother desperately wanted to understand what had happened, but unfortunately the neighbors weren't around, so she had no idea what had become of my friend. After learning all this from his mother, I broke out in a cold, unpleasant sweat. I thought my friend must have encountered something truly terrible. I returned the phone to my friend's mother, exchanged a few more pleasantries, and left. A few days later, my friend suddenly called me saying he wanted to meet, because I was worried about him and wanted to understand what had actually happened. I agreed to meet up. When I met with my friend, I saw his face was haggard. He felt completely different. I even wondered if this person was really my friend at all. Actually, the reason I thought this way was because, not long after my friend called me, his mother also called. His mother told me that no matter what my friend said to me, I should definitely tell him that he was just tired, that he'd seen hallucinations. After receiving that call from his mother, I mentally prepared myself. I might be about to hear something unimaginable. What follows is what happened that day. That day, after I went up the emergency stairs to the 5th floor to take a look, I came back down to the 4th floor and finished talking with my friend. Then I went downstairs to find a phone signal and check the locks on the emergency stairwell doors. After my friend saw me go downstairs, he planned to take the elevator to the 1st floor to scare me. He stood in front of the elevator doors with his back to the emergency stairwell door. The elevator came to the 4th floor and the doors opened, but he also heard the sound of the emergency stairwell door being opened. Then he felt someone slowly approaching from behind him. He whipped his head around to look, but only saw a figure going through the stairwell door, which was slowly closing. He wondered if it was a burglar, so he hurriedly pushed hard on the emergency stairwell door. He felt the door slam forcefully into something, so after he went out, he shone his flashlight down the stairs. He saw a woman with very long hair lying on the floor of the stairwell landing. The woman's body was face down, but her head was twisted almost completely around, facing upward toward her. She panicked immediately, bolted back through the door to the floor, and hid inside the elevator. While inside, she called her mother and said she'd accidentally killed someone. Right then, the elevator doors suddenly opened. Outside, she saw a woman standing there, body facing her, but head twisted backward, away from her. The woman was bent at the waist, standing right in front of her. My friend frantically pressed the close button, but every time the doors started to shut, the woman's arm would block them and they'd spring back open. This happened several times. Then, suddenly, the woman twisted her head around to face my friend and said viciously, "I'll remember you." My friend was so terrified she kicked the woman away, because all that was happening when I pressed the elevator button on the 1st floor. The elevator never came down. Later, when I took the stairs up, she had just kicked the woman away, so the elevator automatically moved to the 1st floor. She escaped the building immediately, went back to the company, and quit on the spot. But after she hid at home,